Imagine, you are a pilot. Below you the Atlantic Ocean. The sky is clear. Fuel enough. Instruments working. You go on air with the base and utter a phrase that no pilot in the world should ever utter. We don't know where we are. White water. We are completely lost. And this is the last thing the world hears from 5U.S. military aircraft. Forever. They are never found. Never. No wreckage. No bodies. No trace. And the rescue plane that took off to search for them also disappears. This is not fiction. It happened on the 5th of December, 1945, in a zone that the whole world knows by one name, the Bermuda Triangle. Today, we will break down everything. What is really happening there? Which ships and planes have disappeared? What science says? And why this zone still strikes fear into those who know the truth. Stay with us. This is going to be eerie. Before we plunge into the mysteries, let's define the territory. The Bermuda Triangle. 3 points, 3 vertices, which, when connected, give you one of the most mysterious zones on Earth. The first vertex, Miami, Florida, USA. The second, the Bermuda Islands to the north. The third, Puerto Rico to the southeast. The area of this triangle from 500,000 to 1.5 million square kilometers. Different researchers draw the boundaries differently, but the essence is the same. It is a stretch of the Atlantic Ocean in which, over the last 100 years, hundreds of ships and aircraft have disappeared under mysterious circumstances. According to some data, more than 1,000 people have died or gone missing in this zone during the 20th century. The very name Bermuda Triangle appeared relatively recently. It was put into circulation by the American journalist Vincent Gaddis in 1964 in an article for Argosy magazine. Although mysterious disappearances in this area have been recorded since the 19th century. But here's what's interesting. Not a single official maritime or aviation organization in the world recognizes the Bermuda Triangle as a dangerous zone. The insurance companies of Lloyd's of London do not set increased insurance premiums for vessels passing through this area. Why? Either because official science has found all the answers, or because some things are more convenient not to notice. Decide for yourself. The 5th of December, 1945, Fort Lauderdale Air Base, Florida. Morning. 5 Grumman TBF Avenger torpedo bombers, known as the Avengers, are preparing for a routine training flight. 14 pilots. Experienced, trained war veterans. The group commander is Lieutenant Charles Taylor. 2,500 flight hours under his belt. A veteran of the Pacific War. A man who knows the air like his own pocket. At 1410 the planes take off. The route is standard, training bombing over Hen Island. Then a triangular route over the Atlantic and a return to base. An hour and a half. Routine. At 1540 the base receives the first alarming signal. Taylor goes on the air. His voice is tense. Attention. Emergency situation. It looks like we've gone off course. We can't see land. I repeat, we can't see land. The dispatcher tries to make contact. The connection is full of interference. Taylor speaks again, and what he says defies any logical explanation. We don't know where west is. Everything looks wrong. Strange. Even the ocean looks wrong. Think about this. The most experienced pilot, a war veteran, says that the ocean looks wrong. At 1625 the ground dispatcher hears Taylor's words, addressed to the other pilots of the group. When the first pilot's fuel runs out, we will all descend together. We'll have to make a water landing. At 1750, the last distinct signal. Then silence. The base launches a Martin Mariner search and rescue aircraft with 13 crew members. A huge flying boat, specifically designed for search operations over the ocean. 23 minutes after takeoff, this plane also disappears. The search lasted 5 days. 300 aircraft and 21 ships took part in the operation. 700,000 square kilometers were combed. The result, 0. No wreckage, no oil slicks, no bodies, no life jackets. The Naval Investigation issued an official verdict. That sounds astonishing for a bureaucratic document. The causes of the disaster unknown. And one of the investigators told journalists a phrase that was later tried to be forgotten. These planes flew off to Mars. Of course, it was a joke. Probably. Flight 19 is the most famous case, but far from the only one. The history of the Bermuda Triangle begins long before 1945. 1872. The brigantine Marie Celeste. Although this ship was found in a different area of the Atlantic, it was its story that set the tone for the entire mythology of such disappearances. The ship was discovered drifting, the sails partially raised. On the stove, an unfinished breakfast, a sewing machine with an unfinished dress, a cat alive, peacefully sleeping in the cabin, the cargo untouched, the crew gone, 10 people vanished. 1918. USS Cyclops, an American military transport ship, length 165 meters. On board, 309 people and 10,000 tons of manganese ore. On the 4th of March, 1918, the ship leaves Barbados on course for Baltimore. Weather good. Crew experienced. Ship in working order. It never arrives. Never. Without a single distress signal. Without a single fragment of wreckage. Without a single note. President Woodrow Wilson personally wrote, "Only God and the sea know what happened to this fine ship." USS Cyclops remains the largest non-combat loss in the history of the American Navy. 1925. The cargo ship Cotopaxi. It disappeared in clear weather between Charleston and Havana, without a trace. 29 people. Do you know what is most interesting? It is this very ship, the Cotopaxi, that appears in Steven Spielberg's film Close Encounters of the Third Kind. It is found in the Sahara Desert. The director clearly knew what he was doing. 1941. The disappearance of 2 identical sister ships. The sister ships USS Proteus and USS Nereus, identical ships, identical cargo, identical route, and both disappear in the same area within a few weeks of each other, both without a single trace. 1948. The Star Tiger aircraft of the airline BSA. Flight London, Bermuda. On board, 31 people. On the night of the 29th to the 30th of January. The plane makes contact 300 miles from Bermuda, reports its arrival in an hour and falls silent forever. The investigation by the British Ministry of Civil Aviation ended with a conclusion that has gone down in history for its honesty. The causes of the disaster have remained unexplained, not because the investigators did not try, but because no evidence remained. December 1948. Flight NC 16002 of the airline Airborne Transport, ADC-3 aircraft with 32 passengers on board. The last message 50 miles from Miami. The pilot reports good visibility and requests permission to land. Permission is granted. The plane does not land ever. Alright, let's switch on the skeptic for a moment. What does official science say? Because science does speak. And some of the explanations are truly frightening. Version 1. Methane hydrates. In the 2000s, British scientists from the University of Edinburgh put forward a hypothesis that explains the disappearance of ships at the bottom of the Bermuda Triangle. And this is a scientific fact. There are huge deposits of methane hydrates. This is frozen methane, sealed in the crystalline structure of water at great depths. Under certain conditions, changes in pressure, temperature, this methane bursts out in the form of giant bubbles. Imagine, a huge stretch of ocean suddenly begins to boil. The density of the water drops sharply, and a ship that just a moment ago was confidently holding on the surface goes to the bottom like a stone. In seconds, without warning. Experiments in laboratory conditions have confirmed. Even a large-scale release of methane into water can instantly swallow a medium-sized vessel. And then, it gets even more terrifying. The methane cloud rises into the air. It does not burn if there is no fire. But if an aircraft enters this cloud, methane gets into the engines. And the engines stall. Immediately, the plane falls into water already boiling with gas. The wreckage sinks to the bottom along with the bubbles. Traces, none. This is not science fiction. This is physics. Version 2. Rogue waves. For a long time, scientists did not believe the stories of sailors about waves 20 to 30 meters high, arising in the middle of a calm sea out of nowhere. They considered them sea tales. Until in 1995, the Draupner platform in the North Sea recorded a wave 25.6 meters high with an average swell of 4 meters. The instruments recorded it. Denial became impossible. Such waves are called killer waves or monster waves. They arise due to the addition of several wave systems at one point. The Bermuda Triangle is a zone with a very complex intersection of sea currents, including the Gulf Stream. Ideal conditions for the birth of such waves. A ship struck by a 25-meter wave simply does not have time to send out a distress signal. Everything happens in seconds. Version 3. Magnetic anomalies. The Bermuda Triangle is one of two places on Earth where the compass points to true north, rather than magnetic north. This creates a navigational error which, if not taken into account, can lead to a serious deviation from course. In addition, local magnetic anomalies have been recorded in this area. The American geologist Bill Dill from the United States Geological Survey confirms the relief of the sea floor in this region creates non-standard magnetic fields, capable of affecting navigational instruments. This is exactly what Lieutenant Taylor could have been feeling when he said, "Everything looks wrong. Even the ocean looks wrong." His compasses showed one thing, his eyes another. His experience contradicted the instruments. He did not know whom to believe, and as a result, he led the group in the wrong direction. Version 4. Underwater cities and anomalous currents. In 1968, off the coast of the island of Bimini, in the zone of the Bermuda Triangle, regular stone masonry was discovered at a depth of 6 meters. It was called the Bimini Road. Official geology declared it a natural formation. Limestone cracks in exactly this way under the influence of water. But a number of scientists, including the geologist man, insist the angles are too regular. The stones are fitted too precisely. This is the work of intelligence. Whose intelligence remains an open question. But there is something important that skeptics prefer to keep silent about. Some returned, and what they tell does not fit into any scientific version. Story 1. Bruce Gernon, pilot. 1970. On the 4th of December, 1970, Bruce Gernon was flying a small Bonanza A-36 aircraft from Androstown to Bimini. The route familiar, the weather clear. Suddenly, a small thunder cloud appeared on his course, unusual, almost perfectly round. Gernon tried to fly around it, but the cloud began to grow rapidly, right before his eyes. Gernon decided to break through it. He enters the cloud and sees a tunnel before him, literally a pipe leading into a grey nothingness. He flies through the tunnel. The walls of the tunnel are rotating. The instruments go mad. The compass spins chaotically. All electrical equipment fails. And then, the tunnel contracts. It turns into a ring. Gernon passes through this ring and finds himself over open water, in fog, a strange, whitish fog, not thick but opaque. The fog disperses. Below him, the coast of Miami. There is only one problem. The distance from the point of entry into the cloud to Miami is 250 miles. His plane should have taken 75 minutes to cover this distance. 47 minutes had passed. 28 minutes simply vanished. The plane covered the distance faster than is physically possible. Gernon is still alive. He is already over 70. He has written a book. He speaks at conferences. His story is documented with flight computer logs, with controller recordings, with witnesses. There is no explanation. Story 2. Don Henry, tugboat captain. 1966. Don Henry, an experienced sailor, a skeptic, a man who was used to trusting only what he saw with his own eyes. In 1966, he was guiding the tugboat Joy from Puerto Rico to Florida through the Bermuda Triangle. An ordinary voyage, but approximately halfway through the journey, his compass began to spin. Henry went out on deck and saw a strange horizon. The sky and the ocean had merged into one. There was no clear line. Everything around as if in a white haze. And then he noticed that the barge he was towing had disappeared. The cable taut. The cable going into the water. But on the other end, nothing. The barge was invisible. Henry turns around, pulls the cable toward himself, and the barge appears again, as if floating out from another dimension. When the barge emerged from the fog zone, it turned out there was no electricity on it. The entire charge in the batteries completely drained. In a few minutes. Story 3. Roy Bush, pilot. 1981. Roy Bush was flying over the triangle in a private plane. Everything was going normally, and suddenly, he noticed that the needle of the altimeter began to rotate, clockwise and counterclockwise simultaneously, as far as that is even possible. Radio communication disappears. The engine begins to work intermittently, and then, Bosch says that a smell appeared in the cabin. A strange smell, like ozone after a lightning strike, and at the same time, the sensation that time had stopped, that the seconds had stretched out. After a few minutes, everything normalized. The engine ran smoothly. Communication was restored. But Bosch had lost 30 minutes, which never were. All right, we have examined the official versions. We have heard the survivors. Now about theories that are not published in textbooks. Not because they are necessarily true, but because they have not been disproven. Theory 1. Infrasound. Professor Vladimir Govrov, back in the 1960s, conducted research on infrasound, sound waves with a frequency below 20 Hz, which the human ear does not hear, but the body feels. At a frequency of around 18 Hz, infrasound causes panic, disorientation, hallucinations, and loss of reason. With sufficient power, death. The Bermuda Triangle is a zone of active atmospheric fronts, strong winds, and specific terrain. Ideal conditions for the generation of infrasound. Perhaps the crews of some ships and planes were simply going mad, jumping overboard, letting go of the helm, and not because they wanted to, but because their brain was receiving the signal. Theory 2. Electromagnetic guns and military experiments. Since the 1990s, documents related to the HARP project, the American program for researching the ionosphere in Alaska, have begun to leak into public access. Some researchers claim the Bermuda Triangle was used and continues to be used for testing technologies of electromagnetic field control, the very ones that can disable electronics, disorient people, and create local weather anomalies. There is no evidence, nor are there refutations, but here is a fact. The United States Naval Base Guantanamo is located directly in the zone of the Bermuda Triangle, and the American military fleet traditionally has a very heavy presence in this region. Theory 3. The portal. This sounds insane. I understand. But hear me out. Physics, serious, academic physics, does not exclude the existence of spatio-temporal anomalies. Wormholes, local distortions of space. Einstein's general theory of relativity does not forbid their existence. The mathematics allows it. Observing them is another question. Bruce Gernon lost 28 minutes and covered a distance faster than the speed of his plane. That is a recorded fact. The explanation, 2 options. Either the plane was moving faster than the pilot thought, or the space between 2 points became shorter for a few minutes. The second option sounds like science fiction, until you remember that quantum physics describes exactly such things, only at the atomic level. And what if sometimes it happens at the macro level? Theory 4. Atlantis, yes, that very one. Plato described Atlantis as an island civilization that sank beyond the Pillars of Hercules, that is, beyond the Strait of Gibraltar, in the Atlantic Ocean. A number of researchers believe that the Bermuda Triangle is the very place where Atlantis sank. And if the Atlanteans possess technologies, and all the legends speak of this, then these technologies may still be working. At the bottom, generating fields, anomalies, interference. The Bimini Road, perhaps one of the few visible parts of this civilization, sounds like a myth. Perhaps. But the Bimini Road is real. You can see it. Dive down and touch it with your hands. The same kinds of clouds appear over the North Sea off the coast of Great Britain, and their air bombs have been recorded. Microbursts of wind at speeds of up to 270 kilometers per hour, striking vertically downward into the water. They create waves up to 14 meters high in a matter of seconds, without warning, without visible causes on the surface. No radar sees them. No weather forecast predicts them. Scientists have suggested that the same thing happens over the Bermuda Triangle. Think about it. A plane is flying in a clear sky, below a calm ocean. The instruments are normal, and suddenly, an invisible blow of air from above downward, with the force of a hurricane, in a fraction of a second. The pilot has no time to say anything, no time to send a distress signal. The plane goes into the water vertically, and the Gulf Stream carries the wreckage thousands of kilometers away within a few hours. Nothing remains. No traces. This explains a lot, but not everything. Because air bombs do not explain ships. They do not explain the USS Cyclops, which disappeared in calm weather without a storm, without waves, without wind. They do not explain why in some cases the crew disappears and the ship remains whole and unharmed, drifting in the ocean. Every explanation closes one door and opens 3 new ones. This is what makes the Bermuda Triangle the Bermuda Triangle. Not mysticism, not the invention of journalists, not paranoia, but the fact that even when we have rational explanations, they never close the picture completely. There is always a gap. There is always a case that does not fit. There is always a question that no one can answer honestly and to the end. Do you know what is the strangest thing? Insurance companies, Lloyd's of London, the largest maritime insurer in the world, do not consider the Bermuda Triangle a zone of increased risk. They do not charge an extra fee for insuring vessels passing through this area. This means one of 2 things. Either the statisticians are right, and the triangle is no more dangerous than any other stretch of the ocean, or insurance companies simply do not know what to fear. Because what happens in the triangle has no precedent. It does not fit into risk tables. It defies classification. And this is perhaps the most frightening thought of all. We do not fear what we know. We fear what we cannot explain.